Yeah, I think we're going.
Great.
Here we are, Fabien. I'm gonna. I should have asked you first, and but how do you pronounce your last name? I spent 2 days in your company, and I never asked you that.
Yeah, actually, it's Demeulenaere, and it's a Belgian name, so you don't have to pronounce it. Fabien will be perfect.
Demeulenaere. Okay, I would have gotten it wrong actually. Fair enough. You're one of you're one of the co-founder of this development studio called Game Atelier, and you just released a few weeks ago now a wonderful game called Monsterboy. Very cool.
That's the one.
Very cool. And I met you, I mean, we were in contact before, but I met you there. I was very kindly invited to your launch party by FDG Entertainment. That I had such a great time again. I can't thank you guys enough for all that. But it's I finished the game now, by the way. It's been a wonderful experience. I was 14 again for about 3 weeks. It took me that long, but yeah, and I've only one drawback with this game is that it's over now, so I might just start playing it all over again. But I mean, what a great adventure! I've been sort of following in the background the development of your game. It started very differently. We'll talk about that in a minute. But how did Game Atelier sort of start? It was yourself and David, I believe.
Yes, exactly. So basically, Game Atelier started with my associate David, that you had the chance to meet during the launch party, of course. The idea was basically I was working with David for a few years at Vivendi Games. And we always had the intention of making a company because we wanted to make, in 2005 or something, we wanted to make the next Castlevania in HD. That was our goal in life. So we just wanted to do that. And we didn't do that immediately. After leaving Vivendi Games, I went to Konami Entertainment, doing some Pro Evolution Soccer games, and David went to Gameloft. And only a few years later, in 2009, we just quit jobs and said that, okay, maybe this is the right time now to partnership and make something, because we have some ideas and experience a little bit now, so maybe it's the right moment to start something. So it all started like that, and in 2010 David and I started Game Atelier at just the two of us and a couple of people we knew at the time to help us making the first Flying Hamster game as a freelancers.
Fair enough. Yeah, you made a few. Initially, it was a few mobile games, isn't that right? Like, I mean, I didn't follow the history before that, but I looked up on your website, and there's actually some cool stuff. I was looking at Tiny Death, which was an iOS game, which is very, very reminiscent in style. You know, the crystals and all that kind of stuff. Very reminiscent of the art style in Monsterboy. That looked like a fun game. I never got to play it, but on the video it looked like super fun. But you did a lot of these games initially. Was it just to get your head out of the sand for the first few years and be financially secure, or was it just projects you had for a long time anyway?
Actually, we kind of experimented a bit, because Flying Hamster, the first game we launched, was a PSP game at the time, and then we ported it to iOS and later on Vita. And just by Flying Hamster itself, it was a game that we clearly made it right, because it sold very well for our small team, and we could keep on working without any problem. That was the best thing that could happen, actually. And then we experimented to work with other kind of indie developers that helped us to make, for instance, you mentioned Tiny Death, or also we made Zorbier and other iOS games, because it was the right moment to do iOS. There was still a kind of possibility to make a little money on these devices, and only after a moment of trying, we decided to to see a little further and say that, okay, we need to do a console game and we need to do it right. It's time to create Flying Hamster 2.
Flying Hamster was a very, very different game. It was a shooter, very in the sort of spirit of stuff like Parodius.
Yeah, you know your stuff.
Well, I know Parodius. I never got to play Flying Hamster, but I looked at some of the footage, and that's the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, oh yeah, this is Parodius in HD. Like, that's really, really cool. It has that same craziness and cuteness, or whatever you want to call it. But you said it did well. Did it sort of help the studio start, or allow it to work on bigger project?
Yeah, actually, Flying Hamster 1 was like we wanted to make something not very complex. So shooter was the right approach because I think at the time there was not so many shooters, like old school and especially like horizontal ones. Myself, I'm very fond of Gradius series and all of them from Konami. It's maybe not that strange that I worked at Konami at some point, but it was something for me. It's like it's a very meaningful project. So I wanted to make a project that's very small scope, and we can do it with very few people. And the shooter with like a limited number, like 6 or 8 levels, was something doable in like 9 or 10 months. That's why we chose this project, because we couldn't jump directly to make the next Castlevania in HD. But yeah, it was interesting for us to start this project because it taught many things to us, to the way we wanted to make it, because we started Game Atelier with the philosophy that we need to make our own tools for working on video game projects. We don't use Unity, we don't use Unreal Engine, we just do our own stuff with our own engine and framework. So we started with this to make the lowest possible things that will create all the games later.
That's one of the things I was going to mention, because it very much impressed me. I was asking when I was at the studio back in Paris. I was asking some of the guys to show me, how they work and what tools they use, because I was just genuinely curious. But everything was pretty much custom tools you're using, which is just equally impressive, because that takes a lot of time and resources to even craft these tools to start with. And it's not like you can craft a tool, you need to know what you're crafting them for as well, which was really cool. Who worked on these tools? Was it yourself and David as well, or?
I think it's kind of I mostly try to adapt the design of the tools and make the ergonomics to make it usable for any developer or graphic designer or scripter, anyone who's going to work on this. So I mostly think about the ergonomics, and David is coding everything, because he's mostly coding all the framework and the tools for animation and stuff like that. And it takes time, but in the end, we still think it's the right approach to make something that exactly how to handle the power and how to make a game run at 60 FPS all the time. Yeah. And if you have a problem with the tool or optimization, it's your own fault. It's not. You don't have to ask a third party to make an update or patch. So
yeah, you can work on it instantly. You don't have to wait. You don't have to pay. It's yeah. And sorry,
we had that experience with a kind of Unity projects that you need to have the right update to push a game, and if not, you have to update the game because there are some leaks and stuff. So if there is a problem, it's just our problem, not
it's fair enough.
Third party.
So. You may have, actually, before we start on it again, I wanted to ask as well, the Castlevania game you wanted to make, was it actually a official Castlevania game you wanted to make, or was it a Castlevania-like or something inspired?
No, actually, I think it was just like a good reason to make tools and to see where it's going. Like Flying Hamster, the first one was made with our own logic of making an HD game, but keep old system with the blocks and the sprite sheets and stuff like that. So it was a very good way when back in 2005 to just experiment and make like let's try to create a level even just like that and make the things technically viable to make a HD game. At the time it was pretty much more complex because so it was a very good way to, as a starter, to say that okay, let's try to just make one level with a Castlevania whatever, and we just try to create our own stuff and see how it works. But after that we just skipped directly to Flying Hamster 1, and that was the kind of first attempt to make a full game out of our technology.
So was it always your plan initially to make a Flying Hamster 2 as a sort of homage to the Wonderboy Monsterworld series?
It wasn't the idea from the start. I think when we just stopped a little for a while and we just looked back what happened to ourselves like 4 years after starting the company, we thought like, okay, let's see, the game that sold much is Flying Hamster, and it has a kind of unique appealing and characters. So why don't we make a second one? That was the first starter, and we thought, okay, so let's do another kind of game, because a shooter, we already done that, it's cool, but let's make something different. And at the time there wasn't that many Metroidvania around, like a few of them of course, but not that many than today. Today is crazy. Like,
it's a saturated genre nowadays.
Actually I was kind of worried about that, but in a way it just comforted me that we took the right approach and right direction, because at the time nobody wanted to make a Metroidvania, and right now everyone jumped on the occasion to make one, because it's something that's very like we wanted to do that because it was kind of obvious to do that. So let's do a Metroidvania, and of course as a very big fan of Wonderboy, I was thinking like it's way too many years than that I've seen Wonderboy game like that. And I started to work with David and Fabien and Johan. We were like 4 persons working on this project, and we just wanted to show what we could do with the IP Flying Hamster and create a Metroidvania around that. So very based on Wonderboy.
I remember, because I remember seeing it's just early stuff that Thomas from FDG Entertainment sent me the first time he approached me to lend some of my covers for the game, and I was just so incredibly excited, because it was just after the Kickstarter and after they taken over or sort of help finance the studio.
Yeah,
and which was, by the way, not another interesting development that happened. You had a Kickstarter for Flying Hamster, and you sort of pulled the plug at some point, saying, "I think actually we're cool." What happened there? How did that work out?
I think it went in 2 steps. The first step was like a week before launching the Kickstarter. We just finished to prepare the main page, and it was almost ready to show it to everyone who wanted to fund the project. Yeah. And I wanted at the time to have a kind of good musicians that would fit to create the Flying Hamster 2 soundtrack. So I just started to dig, and I wanted to contact Mr. Sakamoto Shinichi, the creator of original Wonderboy games. So he's a kind of genius creator and some musical themes that you know better than me, I think. But the idea was that, why not asking directly the guy who made this crazy good music to make it for Flying Hamster 2? So let's ask him. I think I asked directly to Hardcore Gaming 101, Kurt Kalata, and I asked him like, hey, we are looking for the musicians, maybe you had an interview with these guys, maybe you know their contact, and we would like to contact this musician, Mr. Sakamoto, that would be good. And he said to me, oh, Mr. Sakamoto, I think you won't reach him because he's like super busy and working for other company right now. But you can try through Facebook or something. But Kurt said to me like, you should contact Mr. Nishizawa, because I showed him the project on Kickstarter before it went live, and he said like, show it to Mr. Nishizawa, the creator of Wonderboy. I think it would be cool that he sees what you're doing, because it's very based on Wonderboy.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, sure, why not? Let's try. And I dropped an email to Mr. Nishizawa, and I said to him something like, oh, hi, we are very big fans of Wonderboy, and we are creating a project that wouldn't exist without your games, what you did in the 80s and 90s. And what happened? Oh, okay. Is it okay? Is it still working? Okay.
Yeah, it freezes sometimes. It's okay.
Freezing sometimes. Yeah, and he said, and he replied something to me like, "Oh, okay, I see. Wait a minute, I will contact you very shortly." And so we said, "Okay, right, fine." And we didn't expect that much from that email. And a few days later, just right before the Kickstarter launched, he sent us the video of himself, filming himself, and he said like, "Hello, I'm the creator of Wonderboy from formerly Weston Entertainment, and I'm here to support the Flying Hamster 2 Kickstarter, and let's make a crossover with Wonderboy."
That's so cool.
That's cool, and we couldn't believe it ourselves at the time, and just few months ago, I just discussed with another Japanese-speaking person, Florent Gorge, and he told me that he saw what we exchanged with Mr. Nishizawa, and he thinks that it was like a little misunderstanding, because he was more thinking that we directly or indirectly asked him for the IP, but we haven't, basically. That's why he answered like that and said that, okay, let's give them the IP, why not? And thanks for us, he just got the IP like that. So we just lucky him, very lucky about that.
Wow, that's even cooler in a way. So what happens? The Kickstarter goes on for a while.
It's the second step. The Kickstarter launches. Right before we have some kind of ready to be shown to the public, some cool stuff, because we have Mr. Nishizawa on board, and nobody knows that. And also we have also Michiru Yamane, the musical artist behind the Symphony of the Night. And we also have Mr. Sakuraba Motoi, who is a crazy genius again, making music for Dark Souls or Tales of. This is like a true genius of music in video games, so super lucky to have them. So 3 like superstars with us, but nobody knows that at the time. We just launched a Kickstarter, and few hours or days later, I received an email from Thomas Kern from FDG Entertainment, and he told me that we already discussed in the past, because every time we sent or launch a game, we just discussed with Thomas and FDG and show like, hey, this is our new game, what do you think? And they did the same with us since Flying Hamster 1, so it was cool. And he dropped me a message and said like, hey, very good game, Flying Hamster 2, why don't we fund your project? And at the time we didn't especially think about this like that, and actually the Kickstarter wasn't that very high, and we couldn't have made it, I think. But
already okay.
Yeah, and lucky us, FDG Entertainment suggested to fund the project, but also Sega Atlas. Sega Atlas came to us and said like, hey guys, we want to we can fund your project if you want. So we had the choice. And we had a very good choice, and we decided to go with FDG Entertainment. We felt like communication was good with both of them, but it's just a question of feeling and the way we approached the project. But we kept a very good contact with Sega Atlas. And I will talk about that very later, of course, what happened eventually. But that was the second big thing that happened, is that we decided to stop the Kickstarter and go with FDG Entertainment. And we okay, now we have Mr. Nishizawa on board. What do we do? And we just said like, okay, let's just don't do Flying Hamster 2 and make a new Wonderboy game. And that's how Monsterboy started.
Wow, and of course it wasn't called the Cursed Kingdom. It had another name for a while. How was it? Was it the name you decided to be the final name, or was it just a name to just hide the final name at the time?
No, I think it was like we started as a Monsterboy and the Wizards of Booze.
Yes.
It was a joke, and we wanted to make something a little bit silly, like the 90s anime or something feeling, but it didn't please at all at the time. Most of the guys when we showed some images of the project on the internet, people just reacted like, "Oh, it's cool, but what the hell is the name?" Not good. So the joke wasn't very well perceived, so we just kept the exact same storyline and characters. Actually, Naboo is the Wizard of Booze, but only you know that now. But yeah, it was just not a... Yeah, we just wanted to make a joke with this, but people just wanted something more serious as a name, or something more epic.
Yeah, people take their games very seriously these days.
Yeah, and I understand that.
Yeah.
It's like a normal reaction when you...
Of course.
Play a game.
But especially a franchise that was so loved and so dear to a lot of people. I mean, I did share a little tear when I started the game first, because it was... for me, I'm saying Monster Boy now, but it's the Wonderboy series, especially Wonderboy 3 for me, it was such a big deal, and it was such a... We're talking about Metroidvania, but this was indeed a Metroidvania before really the genre had sort of flourished properly. I mean, there had been Castlevania, but it wasn't Symphony of the Night. It was Castlevania at the time, and there had been a Metroid, but it wasn't the style of Metroid that we knew with Super Metroid. So it was sort of a Metroidvania before there were Metroidvanias, and it just felt so... I was going to say overwhelming, but just so open. It was really an open world and really an environment where you could just have fun and enjoy yourself. The music obviously was such a big deal for me, because there was a quality to the music that was sort of... It blended well with the levels, but every time you died, you got to hear that village music, which sort of told you that everything was okay. You know, it's fine. You're just starting over. You didn't die, really. You know, there's something about that which really resonated with me at the time. So when I started the game, when I started the demos at the time, I got excited. But when I actually started the final game, I was 14 again. I really was. It was so cool to see.
Good to hear.
But the music, the work that was done on the music by all these composers that you got was outstanding. How did you get them on board? I mean, because they're just I mean, they're amazing. They really are amazing, and they have that quality where you can actually just still hum them afterwards. You know, they're very recognizable. You can identify them easily, and you remember them, and yet they're still very, very strong and very well arranged and crafted. How did you swing that?
So we just asked. That's a very simple answer, but actually when we started Flying Hamster 2, like I said, there was Yamane Michiru and Sakuraba Motoi. They both answered directly to our emails. We just dropped a couple of emails to some very good musicians, and most of them replied, and they just said no, sorry, or yes, okay. So we just asked, and after that, it's very simple actually, and it's like I think this is very simple, and as long as you have a solid project and that they are pleased by the project, why not? They will try to work with you. And of course, FDG did a very, very fantastic job with the soundtrack, because they asked, when we started to work together, they asked, of course, Mr. Yuzo Koshiro, and also a couple of musicians that I never knew they were so fantastic, like Mr. Keiki Kobayashi, and Yeah, they just added like exactly the right persons to the soundtrack project, and also had the very nice idea to include you in the game. That's something very funny, but it's in the end what they did is very logic, because it has to have the kind of very soundtrack that has plenty of superstars and all, but also it has to be some like a fresh view. And what you did with the banjo and all the kind of traditional instrument was very funny, and we really wanted to make us kind of so they just asked you, I guess.
That's pretty much how it happened. I one day received, because I had, it was back in 2014. I just started the YouTube channel, and I wasn't really planning on having a channel in the first place. I was just having fun with a few tunes. But yeah, I got this email, and he explains the whole thing, and I think the plan initially was just to use one of the covers for a teaser video, and yeah, and it's all. Through talking and just exchanging a few things, I said I'll be doing more anyway, so if you want to use them for anything, feel free, whatever. And it sort of started from there. But I mean, I've at the party I repeated that to everybody, but I did feel like an imposter in some ways to be sort of shoehorned into a video, somebody else's video game. But I know it wasn't necessarily how it was perceived. It was really cool anyway, and I think it's a nice example of collaboration between the industry and people who are sort of on the margins of the industry, just sort of making their stuff from that, and it's a nice connection, and I'm kind of hopeful it will happen again. I know there's a friend of mine running another channel called Mariachi Entertainment System, and they do covers of similar to what I do, but with mariachi arrangements, and they were in Guacamole only recently. They did some tracks for that, and I believe they did a track for Leagues of Legend at some point. So it's cool to see this interaction of the industry and people on the margins of that, especially when it comes to arts and crafts. It's but yeah, it was really cool. Look at I again, I mean, when I saw the first, this thing belongs to a musician called Ali, I was like to call my wife and say, look at that, it's crazy. And I love the art. I love the otter design. I went to
Ali the otter.
Yeah, you gave me a choice of a few animals, and I think that's the one. I like the wolf. There was a wolf at some point, but he was a bit too badass, and I think the otter had just that kind of balance of cool, cute, and yeah, a bit funny.
It was fun because you put so much energy and love into what you did for the covers, and we really thought that it must be a part of the game as an NPC that will explain, hey, I lost all my music sheets, and can you bring them back to me? Yeah. And it's like a very classic, and it was perfectly fitting with kind of putting some more collectibles and some stuff, to make the game like harder to get 100%.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel forced in the game as well. Is the part I liked. It didn't feel like it was just slapped on at the last minute type of thing. It just it feels sort of natural, and the puzzles to find them give me a few headaches as well. I'm very close. Oh, there's a cat. I'm very close to 100%ing the game. I'm missing one heart, and I won't be sharing the photo of the 100% because I died about 400 times, which is probably a lot more than most people combined. So.
This is Mysticat in the game, if you played a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, there's a scoop.
Yeah.
So,
the one and only.
So this all started then, this was back in, was it 2013, 14 at this stage?
Yeah, 14.
And it's 5 years of development from there.
Yes, flies fast.
Had you expected it to be that long, or had you plans to release it much sooner?
I think there are many key points during the development process. First of all, we just had a very small scope at the time for creating Monsterboy. Like we we had a very limited team of developers, and we just wanted to make something that's barely bigger than the Dragon's Trap in terms of content and in terms of because Dragon's Trap was like the reference, so we just wanted to make a kind of copy of the game with the new mechanics, roughly. But what happened was very interesting, because during the development process, a friend of ours, Omar, he just started to make the remake of the Dragon's Trap, and we showed each other our projects. Like, he wanted to make the Dragon's Trap, the remake, and we wanted to make a new one. So it was very interesting, because we clearly wanted to. We clearly knew that where he was going, and we said that, okay, if you go in this direction, maybe we should be more different than what we initially planned. So let's do something completely new in every point. So I think it's a very good thing that Omar started this project of remaking the Dragon's Trap, because it helped us in a way, in many ways, because Omar is the kind of guy who has plenty of things to help us. I will explain that later if you want. But the fact he initiated this project helped us in a very good way. So we scoped up the game, and we just hired plenty of artists, animators, and we just doubled the team, basically. And it's all started to make a very crazy production for more than 2 years, I think. Yeah. And the last year of production was like so many people involved. It's like really insane, but it was very necessary.
At what stage was the storyline sort of finalized? Had you a plan for that very storyline from the beginning, or did it sort of evolve and change throughout the development?
I think the storyline, the idea of gathering the orbs and changing the transformation to get back the initial transformation was the key from Flying Hamster 2. I think it hasn't changed that much. The core concept and the core exploration and stuff like that. But what changed a lot is that we included many different characters with FDG alongside the process. We added like Nabu, who wasn't here from the start. It was brought by FDG, the idea. Also some Foximus in the forest, and his family. Like, this is a kind of NPC that you will meet, and we tried to, some other characters we already planned to put them in Flying Hamster 2, and we updated them, we changed them, but some of them we just added until the end. And I think some of the dialogues and stuff until the very last minute of production, they could change and they could be improved all the time. It's a very dynamic process of creation.
And at this point, I mean, you were very much making a new Wonderboy game, as in officially you couldn't get necessarily the name, but it was a Wonderboy game in your mind and very much agreed upon.
We never thought it any other way. We actually, when we worked on the project in our team, we called it Monsterworld 5 or something like that. Okay. Monsterworld 5. So it was like the next Wonderboy, whatever.
And if I may just stay on this topic a bit, why wasn't it called then either a Wonderboy or a Monsterworld? Was it licensing issues?
No, not really, because I'm going to explain again how Sega was involved again afterwards. I think the idea of changing the name or making a Monsterboy, it's not a question of licensing or IP or anything, because from the start, we just wanted to make the next Wonderboy. But to us, the name Wonderboy wasn't very relevant to keep, especially at the moment when Omar told us, like, I'm gonna make the new Wonderboy Dragon's Trap remake. So we thought, like, okay, let's make it totally different, so there is no mistake between the two projects. And it was a very how can I say? The best way is to make it different, so there is no misunderstanding and you don't make mistakes. There are still people that make mistakes, but better not call it Wonderboy in the end. It was very it's very interesting take actually, and I'd say you're most definitely right. It would have
created too much confusion. In fact, yeah, like you said, I still see in the comments of the videos for the music on my channel, people still asking, is that in the Dragon Strap, or is it a new, or they think it's the old or Omar's game, the Dragon Strap remake. Yeah. And every time somebody explains, no, it's a totally entirely new game. It still had some people confused, which is interesting. But it would have been more confusion if you'd kept the name.
It would be very bad if the name was Wonderboy something, because the people who say that, what, there is Wonderboy already released, it was like, is it the same, another remake or anything? No, let's clearly show that there is a new IP here, a name, but everything but the name is Wonderboy here.
Yeah. Well, what was super interesting watching the developments on your blog is the litany of decision to totally overhaul the backgrounds first, and then the animations, and then it was really cool to watch. It was very exciting. It got some people disappointed that the game wasn't released 15 years before, but it was ultimately the right decision. But yeah, I mean, it's a big decision to take. To change first the backgrounds. They were still very nice, but now they're outstanding. Whose decision was that? Was it your decision? Was it?
I think it's more like the idea with FDG Entertainment from the start was we are not holding anything back when we create the game. There is always something that can be improved, and we're gonna make it until the game is 100% like a triple AI production. Like they decided to put the money and the effort and everything possible to make the best quality product ever. Thing that happened to the project and the way they handled it, it was like they totally went 100% like, okay, no problem, we can just change everything anytime, and we can always improve it. So we never stopped updating graphics until it's perfectly polished.
Yeah, and similarly with the animations, it caught a lot of people unaware, because I mean the animations were fine before, they were perfectly fine, but now they're outstanding. Like it really feels like you're playing a small cartoon, and it's beautifully animated. But that must have been quite a shock, and I'd say it took a lot of time to redo all of these.
Yeah, for the animations it took I think back in 2017 at the end of the year we just had an almost content complete game where we had most of the enemies and the bosses. We knew that we wouldn't change them because they was okay in the concept, and the animation and everything was like on track. So at this precise moment, we just wanted to change the main character and make a new animations because this is something you see during all the horrors, of course. And we decided like to go full retake on every enemy or sprite that we did in the game, and we hired somebody Samir, who just had the role of, okay, we're gonna just change everything to either new animation or new coloring, but we just scrapped everything we did animation wise. And we did that, and it was a bold decision, but I think it was the best decision because we could have something more, how can I say, after so many years of development, there are some styles that emerge, and it doesn't match really, but at this precise point, just retaking everything made something very coherent and very consistent and perfectly aligned together. So now when you play it, you don't see any best or worst moment in animation. Everything is like kind of on track.
And if people want to have an idea of what Flying Hamster would have looked like or looked like at the time, there's still a couple of videos on your YouTube channel, of Game Atelier's YouTube channel, I think. Or is it your YouTube channel? Yeah. But
also see the
Kickstarter video, of Flying Hamster, which it looks fine. It looks really cool, and it looks like a fine little game, but compare that with what the game has become, and it's night and day. You realize why it's taken 5 years, why the changes were necessary to make it the game that it's become. And it truly is a visually outstanding. It's a beautifully crafted thing you've done. You mentioned Omar. Was he? How much of an influence has he been? Obviously, aside from you deciding to change the game, because I know he's sort of there behind the scene a lot as well, and he's quite a key figure in the French, and not just the French.
Yeah,
I mean,
you met him at the launch party of Monsterworld.
Yeah, he's my new man crush, I have to say. We're gonna do one of these at some point as well. We just have to find the time.
I think you both drank too much at the time, but
we certainly did.
Me too. But basically, Omar was like. Yeah, for recall, I think he was like in the same school as David. So it's like a way long time ago when they started to work in I think it was a Epitech school, like a engineer school. And Omar always like followed David and kept the contact. And when he just showed us the Dragon's Trap remake, we already knew that, okay, it's going to be a very high quality from his side, because his teaming with Benfica was very good. And we just thought that, okay, let's keep an eye on that. And when they, of course, showed us, we thought that we need to be as good as this, because it doesn't make sense to have a very crazy high quality on a remake and have a next version of the game that is not very exactly as beautiful. So we need to be different or better or same, but we needed to make something that outstanding. So he helped us a lot just by making this remake. This is a very good motivation for us to do that. And Omar is a kind of, like you said, a very influential person in the, not only the indie scene, because he's doing EMGUI, that is a software that you can use for tracking and to debug and to make windows inside the game. It's very light, it's free, open source, and it's crazy good. And we are using his tool, and we're also giving him a little money for that, very little. But I know that out there in the industry, big studios are using his software without paying anything to him. But hope that there are good people too. Like he has good money too from other bigger studios. But not all of them are doing this. And I think it's something that helped us in a way, because we are using his software for that, and that's a very powerful tool. So we are making cool things with it too.
Is it an open source? Is it that open source thing he's working on?
Yeah, it's a free open source code. I think most of the people that are coding in video game industry know this thing now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope he does well out of that. Yeah, we certainly spent a good bit of time drinking and talking together at the party. I think we closed the place as well. Yeah, but I want to do one of those interviews with him, and he said he'll be on for that, so that could be interesting. But he's a very nice, nice guy, very interesting guy to talk to, and fascinating character. I mean, he's done that Sega emulator as well, and that was him.
Yeah, true.
And, he's a very talented guy. What's interesting when you compare the Dragon's Trap and Monster Boy was that when I played the Dragon's Trap remake, I was like, oh yes, that's exactly as I imagined the Dragon's Trap would be at the time, those scenes and all that. That's exactly what I thought of, at the time. And then I play Monster Boy, and I'm thinking, oh yes, that's exactly what I imagined it would look like at the time. But they look so very, very different, and yet they both get it right in their own way. And I think it's because the art style is so deliberate and so, I mean, specific. It's unique and it's a sort of a stylistic decision, and they both works in very, very different way, which I like very much. There was very strong stylistic decision with that game.
I think when we seen the Omar remake, it reminded us a lot some kind of French-Belgian kind of comic book style in terms of texture and paint and stuff. What we wanted to do is like clearly take the Japanese art direction with the characters first. It's like we just wanted to make anime style, and we at first there was like a design that was more European, and we also asked the French people to create an animation for the introductory anime of the game, and it was cool. It was very good. Yeah, that one was very nice, but it was very European as well. And we decided when we renew all the character, the playable character, that we wanted to ask a studio. And Mr. Nishizawa introduced us to a Japanese studio called Nomad, and Nomad just created all these designs of the new characters that you can see here. If I can put it right.
Yeah.
Okay. So this studio Nomad, they just created all these character designs with us, and we just asked them to create the whole new animations for the intro, and they did that very well. And afterwards, everything we wanted to make is something that really looks like a manga or a Japanese anime. And it's kind of working because many people are asking if this is a Japanese game or not.
Yeah. And yes, I mean, it has that Japanese, very kind of cutesy manga type of stuff, and yet there's definitely a sort of a French touch behind some of the style, which is really cool as well. It just blends really well. But I mean, the love affair between France and Japanese animation goes back a long time. I remember back in the 80s, we had a lot of mangas before they even made it to other countries, like especially America, where they got a lot of stuff much later than we got them in France or Italy or Spain. It's cool to see that connection being made again, and that work. You mentioned your collaboration with Sega as well, and not going with them initially as publishers, but it sort of came back, and you ended up working with them again.
Yes, of course. Actually, they just dropped a few emails to me like, hey, where is it going with your project? Is it going good with RPG? And we said, yeah, it's going pretty well, so we want to release the game at this point. And then Sega just came back to us and said that, Atlas Sega, and they said to us, oh, very good, so why don't we create a box version of the game? Maybe you would be interested if we create this for like a PlayStation 4 or Switch, the other one. And we said, yes, please, of course. So that was very good because they just got back in the loop and had the very, they just wanted to play their role at the right moment, and I'm very happy that they did this. So we have a very beautiful US only box version, but it's still something for us, for a very small studio like us, and for FDG. They never released so many platforms at the same time. It's like crazy work for us. It was very complex, but we did it. And Sega did with this.
What was the idea? I know a lot of people are complaining that there's no box in Europe available directly in Europe, but I mean, if you sort of understand publishing, you know that it's almost virtually impossible to properly release a box in Europe. It would cost way too much money.
Exactly.
And you'd make so little out of a box that it would literally be taking all the money from. It would take away the money from digital downloads, and you'd get nothing from the boxes. Quite literally nothing. It's crazy what's going on in Europe with.
It's a pity because I think even myself I would pay $80 to get this kind of game boxed. But also I think it's always the same. The market in Europe in Europe is like super segmented and has plenty of people that takes a little bit of the price of the box on their behalf before it's been released.
Yeah.
And you cannot do that much. In USA or North America, it's like, okay, Sega Atlas is handling the stuff, so they do all the distribution themselves, and there is no other party that will interfere or intervene. So it's a complex problem here.
Yeah, Europe has way too many middlemen and third parties in distribution.
Yeah.
It's silly. I see it with music as well. It's the same problem. I mean, people blame the sale of hard CDs on digital downloads, but it's not quite true. It's actually much more complicated than that, and publishing and distribution has a lot to do with it. All these middlemen taking the that's the way it is. But I don't want to take too much of your time. I think we're closing close to almost an hour here, but it was quite an adventure. It was all worth it because the game is so fun, and I've said it before. I did shed a little tear again at the beginning and at the end of the game. It was just such a cool experience. I was 14 again. There's one thing I would mention was seeing the Happy Console Gamers review before the few days before the launch, which was actually so cool to see somebody just as excited as I was about it. Did that help the sale of the game? Because I understand it did quite well.
Oh yeah, sure. I think 1 week after the launch, we are like more than 50k units sold, so it's very good for a start. Wow. Like something we haven't seen ourselves, so it's like, wow, at this price tag and at this moment, and it's like, wow, getting very well. And I don't know, but I think of course Happy Console Gamer did a very good thing in selling the game for us and on his channel. That's very, we just sent him a code or something. Yeah. We didn't expect that all the reviews are so positive right now.
In fact, he didn't really talk about the game much. He just said it's so cool. Really, that was about 10 minutes of him going, "Oh my god, it's so cool! It's so cool!" And it was really funny to watch, and I could see in his expression that he was just like as I was. He was 14 again, or however age he was. I had another point which eludes me now, but maybe maybe I'll remember it if we talk next time. But it was really cool to be there with you at the launch as well, and seeing all those reviews coming up and all the scores and high marks coming up for the game, because everybody was just, I mean, you all knew you had a killer game, but the industry is so that sometimes it can happen, things can slip under the radar, but it was just so cool to see like everybody on their phone and just going, oh, okay, we got an 8 here, and we got, and they scored the game nicely on this one. It was just so very pleasant, and it made the resulting evening very, very enjoyable and very festive. Thank you again for first putting me in your game. Thank you for having me over to your studios and your launch party. It was it was very good to have you around, because nobody expected you to see you there. It was a surprise. FDG had invited me and not told you guys, even though you sent me an invite before and I wasn't allowed to reply. So
I remember that, but it's okay. I just guessed that.
Yeah. But again, thank you very much for all that. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. I hope people will find it interesting, I'm sure. And thank you for doing all this in English. I'm sure it's not always easy to talk in your another language. I know a thing about that.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's very good to discuss it with you, because we hadn't much time during the launch party.
Yeah, it was just hard to have a proper conversation with. Anyway, it's always the case in these things. I repeat myself in those podcasts, but that's why I like doing them, because you can spend the time talking one-on-one to somebody. So thank you very much. And of course at the party alcohol kicked in, and that was the end. Thank you very much, Fabien D.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time at some point. See ya.
See ya. Bye. Bon.
Cool. Stop. recording.